Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a really provocative article that takes a familiar story and just flips it completely upside down. It argues that to find the real source of the Philippines' problems and the solution, Filipinos shouldn't be looking at politicians or history books, they should be looking in the mirror.
So, the article starts with a story that, let's be honest, everyone knows. It's a narrative of blame, and it starts way back, hundreds of years ago with the first colonizers.
And, that story of blame doesn't just stop there. It continues, pointing the finger at the next major outside power that came in and really shaped the nation's path.
Then the narrative shifts a little closer to home, but not too close. It focuses on this small group of powerful, untouchable elites, making it seem like the average person is just a helpless pawn in a game they can't win.
But this is where the article just slams on the brakes. It challenges that whole victim story with one single, deeply uncomfortable question. So let's really unpack the argument it's making here.
All right, let's get into it. The source material lays out this really challenging idea, one that basically turns that whole history of blame on its head.
And here it is, the whole argument captured visually. The core idea is that after 77 years of independence, the time for excuses has run out. The responsibility, according to this article, has now shifted entirely to the people themselves.
So here's the crucial point. The article argues that the system, with all its problems, isn't some foreign thing that was forced on the country. Instead, it's like a mirror, a perfect reflection of the values and, more importantly, the choices that the culture has made again and again over generations.
Now, the article doesn't just make this huge claim and leave it there. It actually provides evidence. It breaks down these specific, repeated choices that it says are the actual bricks being used to build and maintain this broken system.
The first piece of evidence it points to, it starts right in the voting booth. The article highlights this persistent pattern of favoring those same old family dynasties over, say, new ideas or proven competence.
And this really gets at a massive contradiction. The article points out this huge gap between what people say they want, which is almost always change, and what they actually do, which is vote for the same families generation after generation.
Okay, so the next pattern it identifies goes a step further. It's not just about passively accepting the system. The article claims it's about actively taking part in the cycle of corruption, especially around election time. This part is meant to be a direct confrontation with the reader. It basically questions your role in the very system you complain about, asking, you say your vote is being bought, but did you take the money?
And this brings us to another critical choice that the article really focuses on, the choice of silence. It's that decision to just stay quiet, to look the other way when you see something wrong happening, whether it's small-time corruption or something much, much bigger. It suggests that this deep-seated cultural preference for pakikisama, for avoiding confrontation just to keep relationships smooth, actually has a devastating cost on a national scale. The author's point is that this kind of silence isn't peace, it's permission.
So all of this builds up to the article's proposed solution. And it's not a new policy or some grand protest, it's something way more fundamental, a pivot in the collective mindset.
The author draws a really critical line in the sand here. Blame, they argue, is passive. It keeps you stuck in the past and it makes you feel powerless. But responsibility? That's active. It acknowledges what happened, but it focuses all the energy on what you can do to shape the future.
So, if the problem was built brick by brick, choice by choice, then the article argues the solution has to be built the exact same way. Not with one single grand revolution, but with millions of small, daily, personal ones. And the article doesn't just leave this as a vague idea. It lays out a super concrete list of individual actions. Things like actually refuse the bribe, report corruption instead of just complaining about it, vote for people based on competence, not because they're a celebrity, even hold your own family members accountable.
The author uses this great analogy. A system, like a new constitution or whatever, is just a tool. We, the people, are the builders, and if the builders keep making the same mistakes, it doesn't matter how great your tools are. A new hammer isn't going to help if you keep hitting your own thumb.
And this all leads to the article's powerful final declaration. It's a full stop to the historical blame game. It's a clear statement that the power and, the burden now rests completely with the current generation. In the end, the article doesn't give you a nice, neat solution. It just turns that mirror back on you, the reader, and it leaves you with one final, very personal and provocative question. It suggests the future of the nation isn't decided in the halls of power, but in the sum of all those individual choices. So the question is, what will you choose?
Okay, so usually when we dive into a topic about, political systems, especially when we're talking about why a country is struggling, the finger pointing tends to go in a pretty specific direction. You know the drill. It's history. It's foreign powers. It's the wealthy elite.
It is the comfortable narrative, right? We are the victims, they are the villains. It gives you a clear target for your anger. And honestly, it absolves you. It lets you off the hook from looking in the mirror. It feels safer to say they did this to us rather than, well, we allowed this to happen.
It really does. It's almost a survival mechanism. But the source material we're looking at today, it takes that comfortable narrative, crumbles it up, and just sets it on fire.
It really does.
We're doing a deep dive into this very provocative and, frankly, pretty confronting article. It's titled, Filipinos Built the Broken Philippine System, and Only Pinoys Can Fix It.
Written by Milton Sewell Rothbard. And it's very recent, January 24th, 2026.
And I have to say, before you even get to the text, the visuals, they just stop you in your tracks.
They're jarring. They're designed to be.
Absolutely. They're these retro-style, almost Soviet-looking propaganda posters. But instead of, praising the state, they list these 12 habits or excuses. And reading them, I honestly found myself wincing a bit.
Oh, for sure. It's designed to be a slap in the face, a real wake-up call. The visual language is stark reds, blacks, gritty textures, and the text is basically shouting at you.
It lists things like, we vote for dynasties, we accept the bribe, and we choose silence.
Yeah, it's not subtle. It's not trying to be polite at all.
Not subtle in the slightest. The headline explicitly says, the excuses are over. So our mission today is to unpack this very uncomfortable mirror that the author's holding up. The core argument is that culture creates the system, not the other way around. And that if the Philippines is broken, it's because, and this is a quote, we built this, brick by brick, vote by vote.
It is saying the quiet part out loud. And for you, our listener, we know you love those moments where you have to fundamentally rethink cause and effect. Well, this deep dive is going to challenge a lot of assumptions about power, about agency, and history. We usually think systems mold people, but this source argues the people mold the system.
So let's jump right into the first major bucket of cold water this article throws at us, the timeline.
Right.
Because usually the conversation starts with that old saying, 300 years in a convent, 50 years in Hollywood, referring to Spanish and American colonization.
That's the standard line, the colonial hangover. And the author just starts by dismantling that whole historical blame game. The argument is simple, but mathematically it's pretty brutal.
How so?
The colonizers, meaning the Americans who set up the current political framework, they left in 1946.
Right.
From the date of this article, that is 77 years ago.
77 years.
Yep.
That's nearly 4 generations. It's a whole lifetime.
Exactly. The source acknowledges that, yes, of course, the Spanish and Americans did damage. No one denies the extractive nature of colonialism. But Rothbard asks this very uncomfortable question. At what point do you stop blaming the ghosts of 1946 and start looking at the face in the mirror? The text explicitly says, we blame the Spanish, the Americans, the oligarchs. Every excuse points outward.
I love the sarcasm in the text where he asks, but who created this system? Martians? Robots?
It's funny, but it cuts deep, It forces you to look at the agency of the voter. The author calls the Filipino people the architects of their own misery.
Wow.
And there's this quote that I think really just sums up the whole thesis. We are not victims of our system. We are architects of it.
That is a heavy label to wear, architect. It implies intent. It suggests the dysfunction isn't just some accident that fell from the sky. It implies design.
Precisely. The source says Filipinos constantly say the system is rigged. You hear this all the time.
All the time.
And the author just says, yes, it is rigged, but who rigged it? If you vote for a dynasty, you rigged it. If you shop at a mall owned by a monopolist oligarch instead of a local business, you rigged it.
You're financing the very empire you're complaining about. So if we follow this logic, it's about complicity. We aren't just helpless passengers on a sinking ship. We're the ones poking holes in the hull and then complaining that our feet are getting wet.
That is a perfect analogy for it. And this brings us to the why. Why would a people build a house that just falls down on their heads?
Right.
The source argues the political structure isn't some alien thing imposed from above. It's just a concrete manifestation of abstract cultural values. This is where it gets really fascinating.
Okay, let's unpack that. How does culture become bad politics? Because we think of culture as, food, festivals, hospitality.
Yeah.
How does that translate to a broken Senate?
Well, let's just look at the presidential system itself.
Yeah.
The source argues the Philippines built a presidential dictatorship
And keeps leaning that way.
and continues to lean toward authoritarian figures,
Yeah.
Not because it was forced on them, but because the culture worships strong fathers.
So we want a king. We don't actually want a public servant. We want a dad who fixes everything and punishes the bad guys.
Correct. The culture prefers a king to accountability. It prefers a personality to a platform. It creates a demand for these messianic leaders.
Okay.
Then look at political dynasties. This is a huge, huge issue there. We keep the same families in power for 60 years. Why?
And the source says?
It's because Filipinos value family loyalty over competence.
That's interesting. So it's not just that the politicians are greedy?
It's that the voters actually reward that behavior.
Wow.
Exactly. If the culture says, stick with who you know, or blood is thicker than water, then the political output is a dynasty. You trust the name you know over the stranger with the PhD.
That makes so much sense. It's scaling up the family unit to the national government. And the source also mentions centralization, right?
Yeah.
Everyone complains that Manila ignores us, but the source flips it.
It does. It argues we centralize everything in Manila because culturally we don't trust horizontal accountability. We don't trust the regions to govern themselves or neighbors to govern neighbors.
So we funnel all the power to the center.
The system is a reflection of a lack of trust between citizens.
It's like the posters say. Our culture created our system.
But the article doesn't just stay in government. It goes right down to the neighborhood level. It talks about crab mentality. Now, this is a term we hear a lot, crabs in a bucket, pulling each other down. But how does the source frame it?
It frames crab mentality not as some atmospheric condition, but as an active verb. It is something we do to each other. One of the visuals lists, we pull each other down as habit number 5.
And it gives this really visceral example, the cousin example.
Yes. The text says, when your cousin succeeds and you demand money instead of celebrating, that's your choice.
Oof.
It's this cultural mechanism where success is basically punished or taxed by the community.
Yeah.
If you make it, you owe us. It turns success into a liability.
Which creates a massive disincentive to succeed, or at least to show it. If I know getting a promotion means 20 relatives are going to ask for a loan, well, I might just keep quiet or leave. And that leads right to the next painful point, colonial inferiority. The source argues that, sure, the colonizers planted the seed, we can blame history for the seed.
But today,
Filipinos are the ones watering it.
Watering it every single day. That's the quote. That hit me hard.
Yes. The text lists things like mocking our own accents, making fun of someone for having a hard accent versus a more Americanized one.
Right.
It talks about worshiping foreign products just because they're foreign-believing imported automatically means better, and viewing migration leaving the country as the ultimate achievement.
That's the heartbreaking part. The definition of success is literally getting out.
Exactly. And the author points out that nobody is forcing a Filipino in 2026 to mock another Filipino. That's a choice. That is self-inflicted psychological violence, a refusal to value one's own identity.
It really shows how deep the self-sabotage goes. It's not just voting, it's how we treat each other at the dinner table. But there's another concept here that I found really interesting. It's about how nice the culture is. We hear about Filipino hospitality, warmth, friendliness. But the source attacks the concept of smooth relationships, or pakikisama. Why is being nice a bad thing here?
This is critical. In many Asian cultures, harmony is a virtue. You want to get along. But the source argues that in the Philippine context, smooth relationships has become a cover for corruption. The poster literally says, we choose silence.
Silence.
The argument is that people choose silence over confrontation. You see your boss stealing, you don't report it, you fear losing your job or just being ostracized.
You see a relative doing something shady.
You don't speak up because you don't want to rock the boat. You value the relationship more than the principle. And the source explicitly says silence keeps abusive systems running.
So prioritizing comfort over truth is actually destroying the nation. It's like, I won't call out the fire because I don't want to ruin the dinner party.
Exactly that. Short-term harmony for long-term destruction. And this connects to maybe the most sensitive institution the source tackles, the church.
Yeah, I was reading that part and thinking, whew, he really went there.
Yeah.
Because religion is such a massive part of daily life in the Philippines.
He did. The source points out a huge contradiction. It claims Filipinos have internalized messages like, blessed are the poor, and money is the root of all evil, to the point where ambition is seen with suspicion.
You use it to justify poverty or mock wealth as dirty.
It becomes a kind of fatalism, God wills it.
But the irony.
The irony, as the author points out, is that while the people chose to believe poverty is a virtue, the church itself built billion-peso cathedrals and tax-free empires.
Wow.
The institution understands wealth and capital, but the congregation was taught to be ashamed of it, or to just accept their lot in life passively.
That is a staggering disconnect. And when you combine that guilt with the silence and the bad politics,
Yeah.
well, people need a way to deal with it all. And the source has a statistic on that too. It's sad.
4 out of 10 adults drink, a third binge drink. The source calls this choosing coping over fighting.
It's numbness over anger.
Yeah. Drinking doesn't fix unemployment.
That's a bumper sticker right there.
It's harsh, but the point is clear. We are medicating the symptoms of a broken society rather than curing the disease. We are choosing to drop our problems into a bottle instead of solving them. It's an escape.
So let's take a breath here. We have this pretty bleak picture. We built the house is on fire, and we're sitting inside drinking and blaming the neighbors.
Right.
So naturally, the conversation turns to, how do we fix it? And in the Philippines, this is where people start talking about constitutional change. They call it cha-cha.
Right. Shifting to federalism or a parliamentary system, these are perennial topics. Everyone says, if we just change the rules, the game will be fair. But the source just throws a wet blanket on that idea.
It uses the tool versus builder analogy. Can you break that down?
Sure. The view here is that a constitution is just a tool. It's a hammer. If you give a hammer to someone who doesn't know how to build, you don't get a house. You get a lot of smashed thumbs. The source argues, if you give a federal system to a culture that values dynasties, you just get regional dynasties.
That's a terrifying thought. Instead of one big problem in Manila, you have 50 little kingdoms everywhere else, run by the same families.
Exactly. It just amplifies the cultural trait, doesn't fix it. And if you give free markets to a culture that likes monopolies, you just get rigged markets. The key insight is this: the system cannot save the people.
The people have to become deserving of a better system first.
Yes.
That feels daunting. It means there's no magic switch. You can't just rewrite a document and wake up in Singapore. It sounds like a generational slog.
It is incredibly daunting. It shifts the burden from a few politicians to 110 million people. It means everyone has to change. But this is where the source pivots from despair to empowerment.
Okay.
It moves into the last section, the path forward. And it starts by distinguishing between blame and responsibility.
I like this distinction. Blame is looking backward, responsibility is looking forward.
Yes. The author says, regardless of how we got here, getting out is on us. The source argues we need to stop waiting for a savior. No president, no foreign aid, no strong man is coming to save the Philippines.
The cavalry isn't coming.
You are the cavalry.
So what's the solution? If it's not a revolution, what is it?
It's micro choices. The source argues that culture changes one choice at a time. It lists very specific, mundane things that happen every day.
Like voting. But not just vote wisely, which is kind of vague.
No, specifically rejecting the cash envelope. In Philippine elections, vote buying is rampant.
The transportation money.
Or the bag of rice given out during campaign season. It says, refuse the money, even if you need it. Refuse the money and vote for a platform, not a name. It's about dignity.
And commerce.
Buying local. The source is huge on this. Stop worshiping imported goods. Every time you buy local coffee instead of the big international chain, you're building the nation. You're keeping capital in the community.
You're betting on your own people.
You are. And then accountability, which goes right back to the silence we talked about.
Right.
The source challenges you. Report corruption even when it is uncomfortable. Defend your successful relative instead of gossiping about them. It's asking for a fundamental rewire of social habits.
It's asking you to be the bad guy at the family reunion who speaks the truth.
It asks the question, are we ready to become those people? Because if we aren't, the system won't matter. You have to be the citizen of the country you want before that country actually exists.
You have to act like a citizen of a first world nation while living in a broken system.
That is the only way the system catches up.
You know, what stands out to me is how empowering that actually is. Because if the problem is the oligarchs or the CIA, I can't do anything about that. I'm just one person.
Exactly.
But if the problem is I gossiped about my cousin or I accepted 500 pesos to vote, well, those are things I can actually control today.
Precisely. It democratizes the solution. It takes the power away from the elite and puts it back in the hands of the ordinary person. But it comes with the heavy price of admitting fault. You can't fix what you won't admit you broke.
The text ends on a very strong note. The colonizers are gone. The excuses are over. The responsibility is ours.
It is a call to maturity. Nations, like people, have to grow up. And part of growing up is realizing your parents or your colonizers might have messed you up, but at 77 years old, your life is your own responsibility.
You can't be 77 and still blaming your dad for why you can't hold down a job.
Exactly.
So to bring this all together, we started with a shock, this idea that Filipinos are the architects of their own broken system. We looked at the blueprints, the culture of dynasties, crab mentality. We saw how silence and coping keep the machine running. And finally, we see the exit strategy. Millions of small, hard choices.
It is a journey from victimhood to agency. It's painful, but it's the only way out. As the source says, if we built it, we can fix it.
For you, our listener, the learner, this goes way beyond just Philippine politics. This is a universal lesson in systems thinking. You look at your own company, your family, your community. If the system's broken, look at the culture that feeds it.
Always. Systems are just people. If you want to change the output, you have to change the input, and the input is us.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought based on this source material. We all like to think we're the good guys who want change, but the source asks us to look a little closer.
Right. If culture changes one choice at a time, consider this. What is one default choice you make every day? Whether it's staying silent, buying the convenient option, or judging someone successful that is actually supporting the very system you claim to hate.
That is the question. The answer might be uncomfortable, but that's where the fix begins. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
It was a pleasure.
See you next time.